That's a ma'am!
Oh.
You guys seem like two classy ladies. What is your name?
Precious.
She ain't that precious.
What is your real name?
Precious.
Yeah, but like when you were born, what did your...
Not your gang name or your stripper name.
Yeah.
Precious.
So, Precious, great name. Why don't you tell us what's going on here?
She trying to get with my man behind my back.
Give me the phone. Just
yo, what you doing?
Stop! I will be reading the part of DeAndre. You read Jaquanda. What are you doing?
Eating soup, trying to lose some weight and stuff.
Girl, you ain't gotta lose.
Thank you.
Because you fine as wine.
Look, DeAndre, don't be texting me again, okay?
You see?
Unless you want to get them nuts up in my guts.
Oh, that's that! Control the situation! That's what you get! That's what you get!
Hey, what's up? Welcome back, family, to another episode of the Hood Politic. I am the Hood Politic. As I always say, I go by the name Desiree to my family and friends. And if you are listening to this now, you are now family. So family, couple cameos. I want you guys to know if you see me kind of looking down, back and forth, I'm not looking at something necessarily. I have a tendency to rant, so I have to keep myself on track, of course, because, you know, we working on some time constraints. But anyways, family, I'm so excited to get into the conversation today. Let's talk about it. The visual and the clip that you heard at the start of the podcast is from a 2014 comedy that's titled Let's Be Cops. So Let's Be Cops, in this 2014 comedy, it starred Damon Wayans and Jake Johnson. Damon Wayans Jr. to be specific. So in the film, Justin, who's played by Wayans, and Ryan, who's played by Johnson, are pretty much at a standstill in their respective careers. So they attend a college reunion, and they just pretty much begin to look around the room, and it just kind of dawns on them that we haven't done a damn thing with our lives. So they like, okay, of course we got to come up with a solution to this. So what's the solution, family? The solution is we are going to continue to do absolutely nothing, and we're going to have fun, though, because life is short. So they get invited to a costume party, and what they believe to be a costume party, I'm assuming. And their costume of choice, if you guessed it, you would guess right, it's cops. So the besties begin to find out something that I'm guessing they didn't know, apparently, which I don't know how they didn't know, but they discovered that people don't really fuck with cops. Like, they stay all the way out of police officers' way. So our young Caucasian brother, Jake, he takes a liking to his newfound fame. So he convinces his best friend, Justin, to continue in the charade of them pretending to be cops, right? Now, let's be clear, guys. It's not like Ryan and Justin had ill intent or anything. It was all fun and games, but they just happen to live in a real world with real consequences. And sometimes what happens is you just kind of fuck around and find out. You see what I'm saying? So the scene you heard to open the podcast is just that. It's a fuck around and find out type of scene. So in the scene, Justin and Ryan stumble upon a cat fight ensuing between, two women, or who they assume to be two women. So in the scene, Ryan jumps in kind of with hopes of kind of diffusing or controlling the situation as he claims it. And Ryan finds out extremely quickly, that he won't be able to control the situation alone. So, of course, Ryan decides he got to enlist the help of his partner, Justin. So Justin stood to the side for like a long time before he decided to do anything. Like, his black side really kicked in, because if that ain't got nothing to do with me as a person, it was Justin in this moment. So Justin finally comes to the realization that, dang, I got to keep up the charade. We're impersonating cops, so I'm his partner. I guess I got to go assist him. So he reluctantly goes to assist him. So Ryan grabs the phone of one of the young women in the videos and once again attempts to control the situation. So the young women appear to be fighting over a shared lover. So the problem is they've kind of discovered that they've been sharing. How do you guys say it? Your man, your man, your man. So Ryan and Justin are not actual cops, of course. So they lack any like real training or anything regarding policies and procedures that can really teach them how to diffuse the situation. So in the process of that, they end up fucking around and finding out. Justin ends up being body slammed through a table. That's the loud noise that you heard. Ryan ends up like thrown across the room where he finds like refuge in a chair because apparently it's very comfortable. He decides to give his best friend a taste of his own medicine. So Ryan sits in the chair and decides to only offer his friend vocal and moral support as his best friend gets his ass handed to him by the two women. Family, the irony of all of this is we have been seeing like real life let's be cops scenarios like playing out in front of our very own eyes. But these like they're not the kind of scenes that like make your heart like filled with laughter and kind of make your day easier. No, these are heartbreaking. They are triggering. Like they are psychologically debilitating and just downright painful to witness. So if you haven't guessed by now, I'm referencing the many investigations and abductions that's taken place in multiple U.S. metropolitan cities by Immigration Customs Enforcement, formerly known as ICE. And watching the countless interactions, family, I'm just gonna be honest with you, it really pisses me off. To see babies being ripped out of their mother's arms and a young man literally seizing in his car from ICE trying to apprehend him and his family, like the extreme force, the bursting out the windows. How could it not piss you off? But the videos cover social media, so it's impossible not to see them. The only way you don't see them is if you're just not, you're not looking. You're simply choosing not to look. But this is something we have to talk about because this is all going to affect us in one way or another. When I was growing up, my grandmother had a saying. She would always say, it could be them today and me tomorrow. And truer words have like never ever been spoken. But family, in order for us to have a conversation about ICE, we have to first understand what ICE is, how and why ICE was formed. We have to discuss the changes that's been brought to ICE throughout countless administrations. But most importantly, we just got to speak some truth to power. So let's take a brief history trip. So the entity known as Immigration Customs Enforcement, like ICE, was established in March of 2003. So yes, you and I are older than ICE. Like ICE was established underneath the Homeland Security Act of 2002. So this was post 9/11. Now, if you are younger, like one of the younger family members listening to me, you may not have been around to witness September 2001. Like September 11th, 2001 is a day in American history you never forget, but it was a fear surrounding it. Like this fear of, no, we have to like ensure we are doing a better job of tracking the flow of people that's coming in and out of, the country. So 9/11, I can remember the images. It was just a complete tragedy, and it changed the lives of so many people. The changes that 9/11 brought to our country, we've felt them firsthand. Like September 11th, 2001, it brought about a huge realization. Up until that point, politicians kind of felt like we were untouchable to the rest of the world. And 9/11 just kind of showed us that no one is untouchable. But essentially, ICE is a merger between two former agencies. It was the U.S. Customs Service and the Immigration Naturalization Service. But ICE was essentially founded, family, to control the flow of goods and people into the country. But understand that, forgive me, family, I seem to kind of lost track. This is what I mean by my brain. I get to ranting and I lose track of everything. But as I stated earlier, family, ICE was established underneath the Homeland Security Act of 2002 post September 11th. But ICE is comprised of two directorates. And the two directorates are the enforcement removal operations, and it is the other directorate, which is the U.S. Customs Service. So the directorate that most people associate ICE with is the ERO, which is the Enforcement Removal Operations. So a couple facts surrounding this. ERO is most definitely responsible for detaining, identifying, and deporting. But an important fact to note is ERO is not responsible for conducting investigations. They do not conduct investigations. So, as I stated earlier, ICE was established 2003. This was Bush administration. So, once ICE was established, the sole focus of ICE was post 9/11 counterterrorism and security. It operated behind the scenes. It just kind of operated behind the scenes in a sense. And the Obama administration, when they assumed residency in 2008, the focus for ICE kind of shifted once again. So the Obama administration shifted the system to more of a tier priority system. So with this, it was kind of like only certain things are given precedent over things that are not as serious. So as the old saying goes, if you can't take the heat, then get out of the kitchen. The Obama administration, they began feeling the heat and they shifted once again. So they began kind of, like I said, prioritizing certain policies and certain things that they just felt weren't as important. So it didn't mean that ICE wasn't still being effective or that ICE wasn't still working. It just means we didn't feel ICE's presence in a magnitude in the way in which we do now. Now, when President Biden took over, he attempted to use more of a wait-and-see approach. And he kind of wanted to rebrand what the image of what ICE was. Now, it is true that ICE's presence became significantly reduced under President Biden. But like I just said, it did the same with President Obama. But that didn't mean it wasn't being effective. As a matter of fact, underneath President Obama, we saw record-breaking numbers in deportations. But all that to say, the previous administrations, they all acknowledged the need for secure borders. Like underneath President Obama and President Biden, we did make significant strides in our immigration policies. I mean, you may not feel that way, but I'm just telling you, that's what the data says. Those are facts. Now, the clip you are about to see and hear is of ICE raids and abductions that took place all throughout the year of 2025. So if you are watching the visual podcast recording of this, which I hope a lot of you will tune in to see, I want you to just focus in on the video. If you're listening to the audio recording of this, I want you to just humor me for a second, and I want you to just close your eyes, okay? I want you to listen, and I want you to take note of what you feel. I want you to take notes of what you sense, okay? So here's the video. Check it out.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Show me. Show me right now.
Where's the warrant at?
No. Show me the warrant right now.
We're not gonna let her go.
Yo, get your hands on my mom.
And him saying goodbye to his family.
He's not going anywhere. He's gonna go see
No,
his
and then he won't come back. How dare you?
You guys really don't need to be doing all of that.
It's fine.
حبيبي كيف بدي اتصل فيك؟
Take Amy. Call Amy. She will be.
Okay.
Mommy's coming now. Okay?
I'm getting out.
Well, you should have done it already.
you 3 times. Unbuckle your
Yeah, but you still don't do a snap.
Step out of the car.
Because I'm Iranian.
Yes,
I'm Iranian.
I understand.
That's why they are doing this.
But they're doing anything.
I'm born here. I'm born here. Brooklyn, baby. Suck my.
What did you feel, family? What did you sense? I want you to remember that feeling, because the next time someone tries to insult your intelligence and tell you it's not that bad, it's not that deep, I want you to remember that feeling. I want you to remember what you sensed, because this is that bad. This shit is not normal. Okay? But that brings us to our current presidential administration. So the most significant shift we've seen with ICE underneath our current presidential administration is the shift that we see in the funding for ICE. The current budget for ICE exceeds the entire budget, the entire federal budget for our entire federal prison system in its entirety. ICE's annual budget now, it increased underneath each administration, which makes sense when you think about it. With President Bush, he established a budget of approximately $3.5 billion for ICE in his inauguration. President Obama increased that to an annual budget of approximately $6 billion under his administration. President Biden came along and established an annual budget of about $8 billion. So we go from 3.5 to 6 to 8, all increases. Well, President Trump came along, and President Trump told Bush, President Obama, and President Biden, hold my beer. ICE's annual budget doubled underneath President Trump. It's reported to exceed approximately $20 billion. And that's actually going to be more from what we're seeing in the House. But, question, family, are we sure America has $20 billion? Are we sure? I mean, we were just cutting funding to SNAP, and we're trying to cut healthcare subsidies and Medicare. So are we sure America has 20 billion? Yeah, we have it. They just don't have it for the things that we actually need. Now, the great Tyler Perry once said, somebody told him money don't buy happiness. Well, he said, I sure as hell would like to find out. He got to find out, but you feel me, family? But this isn't just a change in policy, guys. This is like a complete overhaul of the system. This is like a mass removal campaign. And sadly, this campaign is aided by fear, hatred, racism, bigotry, and our tax dollars. So where is that $20 billion in funding going? Where is it being spent? Because it's most definitely not being spent on us. Look no further than the recent surge in hiring for Immigrations, Customs, and Enforcement. So ICE has seen its largest staffing expansion in the agent's history. So underneath President Trump, ICE received over 200,000 applications. And they proceeded to hire 12,000 new enforcement removal operations officers and agents. That's a 120% increase in less than a year. Now, for anyone who's ever served in the United States military, like myself, or you've ever been a government contractor, you kind of understand the process of what it's like, getting a job to work in the federal government. It takes a while. When I say they vet you, your family members, your friends, your associates, and your pets, they do not play. They vet everyone. But you get the point, family. Like, this isn't Walmart or event security, and you should still exercise discretion with those. But it requires we exercise like advanced scrutiny, because if you're giving these jobs, you become privy to a wealth of information and resources. But we began hearing concerns over like rushed vetting, like, and verification not long after the surge. So I'll be the first to admit, family, like I was a bit skeptical at first. Like it was really difficult for me to just believe that, wait a minute, the United States just, No, I've been a soldier. So I've worked as a contractor. I understand that government jobs aren't jobs you start in like a week or 2 weeks. Like, it just doesn't work that way. But once the articles began coming out and they were more and more frequent, like, of course I had to pay attention. But the Atlantic highlighted that recruits were being sent to Brunswick, Georgia, before completing like mandatory drug tests, like background checks and verification forms, like, and even fingerprinting. So to top it off, even with lowered physical and like academic standards to become an agent and an officer, nearly half of the new recruits of those 200,000 failed written exams that were open book on the Constitution. You heard me right, open book. Now, I'm pretty sure the only way you fail an open book exam is if you struggle with reading comprehension or you just kind of struggle to read. And no offense, because that can be changed. But if that's the case, I mean, you most definitely have no business applying for that job. And I'm sorry, pardon me, family. I'm an Aquarius. My brain kind of works a little different than some people at times. But if these people weren't smart enough to pass, like, an open book exam, how smart could the person who hired them be? But the article from the Atlantic was just the beginning, guys. Like, NBC reported that during training, over 200 recruits were dismissed after it was discovered they had like criminal backgrounds or failed freaking drug tests. Like, for real? Government job? Yeah, for real. But what's the sum of unhealed trauma and power? I'll tell you what it is. It's what we're seeing play out with these ICE agents. Like, it's what we're witnessing in these ICE raids. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a reality of responsibility to each other. Like, it leaves us with the reality of knowing I have to understand my rights, my constitutional rights. Like, make no mistake about it. Undocumented people still hold rights under our Constitution. Now, first and foremost, you always have the right to remain silent. Always. I know it's watered down because you hear it all the time in TV, but no, that's an actual right. You always have the right to remain silent. You do not have to answer any questions, and that includes where you were born. Secondly, understand, family, ICE is unable to enter your premises without a judicial warrant signed by a presiding judge or a court. Now, it's important to note that an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant are not the same thing. An administrative warrant does not give ICE authorization to enter your home without your consent. Now, if this means ICE comes knocking or banging on your door or the door of a family member or a friend, let them know, no. A, if they cannot identify themselves as agents, and B, you cannot show me and display the warrant up to the door for me to see it signed by a judge, then no. And please, family, by any means necessary, do not open your door. That's if you're even dealing with agents logical enough to sit and hold a conversation with you that's just not going to barge in. If you're dealing with real actual agents who just got some common sense, they will slide the warrant underneath the door. Then that gives you a chance to read it, take a look at it, make sure it's signed by a presiding judge or court, and proceed from there. Third, and arguably, and this is probably the most important because this is something so simple that could just save your life. Understand that you have the right to record. You hold the right to record. This right is protected underneath the First Amendment. Like, you can record and photograph ICE agents just as long as you don't interfere with the operations, when they're in public spaces. Now, I understand that even when it's situations where you aren't interfering and all you are simply doing is something as simple as just trying to make people around you aware by blowing a whistle or taking your phone out. I understand that it's very real that you're placing yourself in danger just by exercising a constitutional right. So you're saying, why are you even telling me this? I'm telling you this just because I want you to be informed. And in this season, one of the only things we can do really is remain informed and do our best to stay informed. But the last thing I want you to remember, family, is that nothing else matters except your safety. Like, a car window can be replaced. Like, your life cannot be replaced. I'm not saying act in fear, because no. I believe very strongly that our Creator didn't give us the spirit of fear, but exercise your constitutional rights and your power, but use discernment and use good judgment. Like, a true federal agent can always identify themselves. If they can't identify, then don't engage. But the important thing to remember when we discuss politics is the people don't work for them. They work for the people. In the words of the great Kendrick Lamar, we're going to be all right. Family, that's all the time I got for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, I've enjoyed having the conversation. I want you guys to know that the content that's used in tonight's episode, I always try to shout them out. The content is courtesy of @film, FILM.me on TikTok, and @THERE, because I know that be tearing y'all up. But @THERE count, COUNT. So as always, shout out to them for the content. We appreciate it. Please remember to follow the podcast on social media. Follow us, please, and listen to us, stream us everywhere, where you hear your podcast, your Apple, your Google, your Spotify, your iHeartRadio. You guys check us out as well. Check out the visual recording of this on YouTube. Going to be on Substack as well, guys. But please remember, please remember to engage. And when you engage, remember Remember the 3 rules: keep it fair, keep it factual, and keep it respectful. So until next time, know that I love you all. I wish you all divine peace and abundance. And remember that culture moves people, but politics decides outcomes.